This season, the Minnesota Timberwolves are by far the best defensive team in the NBA, and it comes as no surprise given the fact they have Rudy Gobert, a three-time DPOY, who has the best odds of winning the award again this season. They also have Jaden McDaniels, whom I've talked about in a previous video, and he will very likely make an All-NBA defensive team this season. And of course, Anthony Edwards is showing he can play on both sides of the floor, averaging almost 1.5 steals. Lastly, Nickeil Alexander-Walker has stepped up tremendously on the defensive end of the floor compared to previous years. The Timberwolves have a defensive rating of 109, which is by far the best in the NBA. They only allow 106.7 points per game, which in today's NBA is really good, as 14 teams, so half the league, currently give up more than 115 points, and you see crazy scores this season. The Timberwolves are of course one of the best rebounding team in the league, particularly in defensive rebounds, which plays a major role in their defensive success this season. The team is ranked 4th in defensive rebounds at 34.5 rebounds per game, with Gobert averaging about 13 rebounds, but Karl Anthony Towns is actually grabbing about 8.5 rebounds, which puts him 6th in rebounds per game among power forwards this season, in front of Jason Tatum. And Anthony Edwards is also doing a great job at crashing the glass, as he's averaging over 5 boards, including 4.5 defensive rebounds. But the team is also 6th in total blocks this season, which makes sense given that they have Rudy Gobert and Naz Reid, and those two, especially Gobert, are good shot blockers. Of course, a guy who plays a major role in Minnesota's defense is Rudy Gobert, who's grabbing almost 13 rebounds as I said, including 9.2 defensive rebounds, and that alone would put him right outside the top 15 in rebounds per game in the entire league. Also, he's averaging over 2 blocks per game and doing an amazing job at protecting the rim. In fact, he has the lowest opponent's field goal percentage at the rim in the NBA. In other words, opponents shoot 15% less efficiently at the rim when being guarded by Gobert, which is a huge difference. Here are some plays where you see him doing a great job at protecting the rim. On this play, Norman Powell drives to the basket and Euro steps into Rudy Gobert, who provides help near the rim, leaving a bit of space for Zubac. And so Powell passes it to him, but Gobert is so big and such a good defensive player in the paint, and his presence alone can disrupt players' shots. But here, he does a good job on closing out on Zubac, who misses the shot. Here, Reith does a good job at faking a 3, leaving him able to drive to the basket. But the sheer presence of Rudy Gobert inside the paint is enough to force Reith to shoot a contested hook shot. The most interesting thing about this play is Gobert's footwork. As Reith is driving, Gobert anticipates the finish on the left side, so he sets his feet in a way to force his man to the right, but his upper body is positioned in such a way that he's able to stay on him and contest the shot. Rudy Gobert's perimeter defending has also improved a lot. Before, teams used to try and get switches so that he'd end up guarding on the perimeter against guys that would have no problem blowing by him or creating shots for themselves. However, now, he's shown he can guard on the perimeter. Look at how mobile he is now when guarding guys on the perimeter. This happened back in January of 2024, where Gobert was guarding LaMelo Ball, who's very shifty and known for his flashy moves. You see Gobert extending his arm out trying to disrupt the dribble without moving his feet so that he doesn't gamble and try and go for the steal, which would result in LaMelo blowing by him. This arm movement gets LaMelo to drive, and look at Gobert's left arm extended high up to deter any shot attempt. So LaMelo resets, but with time running out on the shot clock, he has to settle for a brilliantly contested 3-point shot. Finally, he's a great shot blocker, and not only at the rim like one might expect, proving he's become much more mobile this year. About 33% of his blocks are at the rim, and he even has 4 blocks on 3-point attempts. But most of his blocks are on short mid-range shots at about 61%. As we all know, Rudy Gobert is a great shot blocker. Here, the Rockets run a pick and roll and Gobert is waiting for Cam Whitmore at the nail. Whitmore is an explosive finisher, and even though he's able to get a shot up, as we've seen, Gobert has become very mobile and is able to get the amazing rejection. In that same game, he gets another block on Jalen Green, also an explosive finisher. The Rockets run yet another pick and roll, and look at how strong he is as Jalen Green tries to bump into him to create some space for himself. Instead, Gobert stays with him and is able to get his hand on the ball. Let's talk about some of the effective ways they use to defend screens and pick and rolls. Minnesota either hedges or is in drop coverage when defending pick and rolls, depending on where the defenders are on the court. That way, when they hedge, they apply pressure on the ball, knowing that help is going to come on the rolling screener, thus denying any pass to the screener, and with 2 guys on the ball handler, he's not going to be able to skip past it to the corner, even though that means one defender will have to guard 2 guys on the weak side. We see this on this play, where Walker Kessler sets the screen for Keontae George. The Wolves decide to hedge because if George tries to pass it to the big man, Mike Conley can always provide help. So they decide to hedge, and now George is being surrounded by 2 defenders, and he's unable to pass it to Kessler because of the double team, and he's ultimately forced to take a bad shot. And as he gets a shot up, look at how Naz Reid immediately boxes out Kessler on the rebound. And before he shoots the ball, we see Chris Dunn open, but because of the amount of pressure the defense is applying, and the fact that George can't see Dunn, and that he's taken a step, he has to shoot it regardless. On this play, they hedge the ball screen again as Jock Landale sets the screen for Jalen Green. Now, Cat takes care of Landale while Gobert recovers, and Jalen Green picks up his dribble and shoots a heavily contested 3. So the hedge was successful as they forced Green to pick up his dribble and take a bad shot. In drop coverage, they rely on the guy guarding the ball to fight through the screen and stay on his man. And obviously, the defender waiting in drop coverage can deny any pass to the rolling big man, and that often results in a successful defensive possession, assuming the first defender stays on his man. Otherwise, the drop defender would have to come up on the ball handler if there's no help, leaving the rolling big man wide open. We see it here, where all 3 other Jazz players are on the weak side. Kessler sets the screen for Chris Dunn, and McLaughlin fights over the screen while Naz Reid is waiting in drop coverage. That way, even if McLaughlin is beaten, you still have help from Anthony Edwards, and Naz Reid can deny any pass to Walker Kessler. However, here, McLaughlin recovers, and because of that drop coverage, Chris Dunn has to take a heavily contested shot. And here's another example where Anderson gets beaten by Powell, but because Cat is in drop coverage and Mason Plumlee isn't an outside threat, Powell shoots a contested floater and Naz Reid secures the rebound. So even though, as I was saying, if the on-ball defender is beaten, the drop defender has to come up, which can result in the screener being open, but it doesn't matter as soon as the ball leaves the shooter's hands. Jaden McDaniels is one of the team's best defenders as well, and is one of the most versatile defenders in the NBA. He's averaging almost 1 steal this season, which is tied for best steals per game throughout his career so far. It may not seem like a lot, but Jaden McDaniels' defensive impact goes beyond stats. You can see how valuable he is to Minnesota's defense on the court. And very much like Rudy Gobert, his length and defensive instincts allow him to be a great rim protector. In fact, opponents only have 54% of made shots at the rim, which is a difference of minus 8.6% between their usual field goal percentage at the rim versus when they're being guarded by Jaden McDaniels. I mentioned in a previous video that he's the player tasked with defending the opponent team's star. About 75% of the time, he's guarding 1 through 3. And you can see that defensive versatility of his on the court. On this play, he's guarding De'Aaron Fox. Fox gets the screen from JaVale McGee, and look how well McDaniels fights through that screen and stays on him, resulting in a turnover by the Kings. Here, he's guarding LeBron and a completely different player than Fox, showing that versatility defensively, and once again, he's able to fight through the screen and stay on him. And he then gets a great rejection on Anthony Davis. Minnesota's defense is extremely impressive, and they found a way to utilize their players in a way that they don't step on each other's toes. And of course, having defenders such as Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels helps, but the way they lock down opposing teams is absolutely genius.